what we did last time, apart from a general discussion about what you're going to be doing in the unit, was we talked about the bibliographical exercise and the essay plan. What I want to do today is to talk about the other bits of the assessment, so the interview, the essay draft, and the final essay. Before I get to that, does anybody have any questions left over from last time, particularly any questions about the bibliographical exercise, given that it's due fairly soon? Yep.
Yeah, so I was I've got a few philosophers, and I'm fairly certain fit the characteristics of what I'm looking for. And the thing that I was uncertain about is specifically the bounds of what's on the Stanford Plato, the Stanford Encyclopedia that makes them not a candidate. Because, like, do I need to look for anything they've ever written that's on the Stanford site? Or
You only,
not written, but like are cited for?
The only things that are off limits are things that are explicitly listed in the listed bibliographies in Stanford. So,
the 10 topics.
So there are a bunch of things that I've referenced in the Stanford Encyclopedia and said these are the assigned readings for these topics. They're the things. What's in there is off limits. It doesn't matter if it's somewhere else in Stanford. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time searching in Stanford to see whether something's been cited somewhere else.
So just pull up all of those and anything that's cited
Yeah.
under any of those.
Yeah, that's right. But if you're picking, say you're doing the second topic, the one on mass terms, the things and stuff, there's only one entry that you have to have a look at, the one that's relevant to that.
Okay, so
right.
do we need to let you know which one is our topic that we're intending to work in?
You need to say what the topic, which one of the 10 topics is the one that you're focusing on for the purpose of the exercise, so that it will be relatively easy then to check whether you've done the exercise properly. So I hope that was clear.
Getting the philosopher that we're using, we want them to be writing about that specific topic.
Yeah, that's right.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
And if our topic is, like, I'm saying, intending to write on fiction for my essay, if fiction doesn't necessarily fit for the authors for my name.
Yeah. You can just pick one of the other topics, and because it's partly an exercise in just getting familiar with some resources for searching for philosophical materials, which will come in handy when you're researching the fiction topic anyway. Yeah.
If I wanted to research no references to a specific paper, and that paper says on metaphysics numbers, but also quite a lot of epistemology,
Yeah.
or philosophy, mathematics, anthropology, not necessarily entire focus of metaphysics, is that?
So long as it's got enough, that's not going to help you, is it? So long as it's got material in it that's about the topic, so long as there's material in there that bears on the metaphysical question about the existence of numbers. It doesn't matter if not the whole. I mean, this would be particularly true if you're referencing a book. There might be a whole part of the book that was about the existence of numbers, and another bit that was about how you know that there are numbers, right? That would be fine. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing is about the interview or the oral essay plan. So the way that this is going to work, everybody is going to have well, I've said 15 minutes, but it'll actually be about 20 altogether, about a 20-minute meeting with their tutor to discuss the essay plan that you've already done and you've already gotten written feedback on. So the essay plan goes in week 4. You should get it back in week 5. The tutors will be instructed to mark all of the essay plans that come in on time first, and then the later ones, the ones that come in after time subsequently. If you hand it in on time, you should get it back within a couple of days, so you'll have time to prepare for that interview. So I'm going to say a few things about the interview, because this is probably the most unfamiliar part of the unit, something that you may not have done before. So you should turn up prepared to answer questions raised in the written feedback that you've received. So the written feedback that you receive will be quite detailed. It will have questions and comments of various kinds in it. Some of them will not be things to talk about in the interview, like if there are corrections because you've chosen the wrong word to use, or because a sentence was kind of poorly constructed or something. That's not going to be stuff to talk about in that interview. You will have to have some questions to ask in the interview. I haven't told the tutors exactly how they're going to conduct the interview, but the way that I did them in the last 2 times that the subject runs is I just ask people to say, my first question is, what do you want to talk about? Right, so you have quite a bit of control over making sure that you get what you want out of the meeting. There's various things that you'll be graded on, including the adequacy of your responses to the comments that you got back in the essay plan, the substantive comments, not the incidental ones, and on how good the questions are that you ask. So there's actually, as there is for all of this, there's a grid. So the marking covers 5 topics: presentation, content having to do with being clear and concise, content having to do with being relevant, preparation, so organisation, and responses to the comments. I'm going to say a bit more about what I mean by each of those things, so you've got a bit more guidance about things that the tutors will be looking at when they are marking this task. So for the presentation, the most important things are you audible rather than mumbling? Is it easy to follow what you're saying? And are you engaged with the topic? So a bit of enthusiasm as well as being easily understood, right? So that's 1/5 of the marks. The second bit for content, so the clarity and concision part, is what you say coherent? Is it unambiguous? Is it tightly focused? So have you come knowing exactly what you want to say, what you want to find out about? Is it, as I've said there, focused? So that's the second part. Third thing, the relevance part of the content. Are you on the topic? Does what you say show that you've been thinking about your topic? Right? So you have to demonstrate that you've been thinking about this material in the time between when you did your initial plan and when you come to the interview. Another question is what you're saying original relative to what you've read? So that's a harder thing for the tutors to assess. It's a question about your thinking independently. It's not a question about your thinking up things that nobody has ever thought of before. Right? But you've got an essay plan, you've read some things for that, you've got some feedback. What sorts of thoughts have you had that show that you're really thinking about this for yourself? So that's the third part. Fourth part, about the questions that you ask in the interview. So are your questions relevant? Are they unambiguous? Are they tightly framed? And something that will be a little bit harder for the tutor to assess, are they the best questions that you could be asking? Right, so have you made good use of your time in preparing for the interview, framing the right kinds of questions to ask? And the last bit, the response to the comments that you will have received from the tutor. So how seriously have you thought about the comments? Have you come up with good responses to them? And a last thing, which I've put under here, have you made the most time of the made the best use of the time that's available in the meeting. Right? Because ultimately, I think this is on the next slide, ultimately the aim is to finalise a definite plan that you'll be able to work to when you write the essay. Okay, so this is going to happen in the week of April 3 to 7. One thing I should say right now, so this is both for the benefit of people here and people listening, if you're going to have trouble getting to an interview during that week, you should contact the tutors straight away so that we can make some alternative arrangement to deal with whatever problem you've got. We want the interviews all to be face-to-face, to happen in rooms up in the Menzies building, but if you absolutely can't make one of those, maybe we can arrange something by Skype or something like that for the week if it absolutely has to be done that way. And I think, yeah, that was everything I wanted to say about the interview. So any questions about this part of the unit? I've given you a bit more detail than is in the unit guide about exactly how you're going to be assessed when you do this, and a little bit more about how to prepare for it. Yeah.
Presumably we should be writing down the tutor's feedback, but should we just try to make sure that doesn't interfere with what we're saying?
You should bring your a hard copy of your essay plan, which will have the feedback on it, and probably either a separate document or your own annotation, just to remind yourself of the things that you want to say. That will be perfectly fine. Is that the question?
I was
Or?
more thinking if there are responses during the interview.
Oh, right.
If you're asking, what should I do with this? Like, if you're asking a question like that,
Yeah. So I think, maybe it'll be too time-consuming to write it down straight away, but you should write it down straight afterwards. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Would we be allowed to bring in your recording devices? Obviously, within tutors'
I think probably not. I think it would be better if you're having trouble remembering that you write to the tutor afterwards and say, I've forgotten this part of the conversation. What exactly were you saying? I think that should be fine, and that would be preferable. Yeah. Okay, so the next thing that you'll be doing is the essay. Well, I've called it the essay draft, but really you're going to write an essay. That's the next thing that you're going to do. So the essay will be 3,000 words. You should try to make it as good as you can. So as I've said there, it's only a draft in the sense that you're going to be given lots of detailed advice about how to improve it, and then you'll be expected to go away and write it again. Right, but the first time that you do it, you should make it as good as you possibly can. Okay, so there's a grid for this one as well, with 6 categories in it, 2 that have to do with writing, a couple that have to do with understanding of the literature and the general topic, 1 that has to do with the structure of the essay and the structure of the argument that you're developing, and 1 that has to do with originality, where originality is understood the same way as I explained it before. It's evidence that you've been thinking for yourself about the topic. Okay, I'll say something about referencing. This is a boring topic, but always people ask. So you can use any referencing system that you like. There are, I have no preference. I don't mind if it's your own system. The only constraints are that you must use a single system and you have to use it consistently so that similar types of reference items get treated the same way every time you come to them. And the only other thing is you have to include all of the relevant information. Right, so there's got to be enough information there so that the person who's looking at your list of references can go and find the thing easily. Right, that's the whole point of the bibliography, to make it easy for people to check your references, to go and have a look at them for themselves. So You should have a standard format, a template for books, book chapters, journal articles, and maybe for some other things as well, but they're the three things that you're most likely to be citing. So here's an example of each, the way that I would cite them. I like citations that have very little punctuation in them. That will be obvious. Many standard systems have lots more punctuation than I use. So for a book, surname, initial, if there's more than one author, and surname, initial, the date, the title of the book, the place of publication, and the publisher. And with that information, you can find the book. For a book chapter, one way to do it, so first way, so we have the name of the person who's written the chapter, I put the date there, then the title of the chapter, and then it's in the names of the editors, and a bracketed EDS to say that they're the editors, title of the book, place of publication, the publisher, and the page numbers, because it's a part of a book, just to make it easier for whoever's searching to know where in the book it is. Journal article, so these are very straightforward as well. The name of the author and the first initial, the date, the title, the name of the journal, the issue number, sorry, not the issue number, the volume number, and the pages. Some people put in issue numbers. I think that's a waste of time, so I leave them out. Some people give authors more than a first initial. Some people write out their first name. Some people write out everything that they use as their title when they publish, for reasons of, if you're making big bibliographies, you want to write as little as possible. I give everybody one initial, but that's, unless it turns out that there are two different D. Lewises that I'm citing, and then I'll give each of them a first name. As I said, this is my way of doing it. It's completely idiosyncratic. It's the way I like to do it. It's not one of the standard systems. Whatever you do, just be consistent in what you do. One other way to do book chapters is to cite the book first. So this is Gendler and Hawthorne, conceivability and possibility. So this is the same example again. If you were citing several things out of this one book, several chapters, and then for the individual chapters, it's author, title, in, and then just the author's, eds, and the date, because you've got it elsewhere in your bibliography, right? And so there's a cross-reference within your bibliography. You wouldn't do this unless you were citing 3 or 4 chapters from a single edited collection, and then you might do it this way because it'll save a bit of space. Related to the bibliography is the practice that you use for citations. Again, I don't mind what you do. I'm going to tell you what I prefer, but I'm not expecting you to do what I prefer. You should do whatever you like. So this is a matter of individual taste as well, whether you use endnotes, whether you use footnotes, or whether, like me, you try to do without either. Right? So I don't like footnotes or endnotes. I think if you've got something that's worth saying, it should be in the text. If it doesn't go into the text, then it's not worth a footnote, so you shouldn't have any substantive footnotes. That's my view, but you know, people differ about this. Some people like long scholarly footnotes. I don't like that. And I prefer in-text citation using author, date, page number, just in the text, so that gets rid of all of the non-substantive footnotes as well. But it's up to you. Use whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you like. Okay, so questions about the essay. I couldn't think of what else to say about it. I'm sure there are things that you may have questions about. One thing, there are some instructions they weren't mine, they were kind of standard in the unit guide about formatting. Because we're going to use track changes and comments to provide the feedback, it really doesn't matter if it's double-spaced or single-spaced. In any case, the person marking it can change those things instantly. So don't worry too much about, and I think it says Times New Roman 12-point double-spaced. It doesn't matter. The last part is what I'm now calling the essay. So there are two parts to this. First of all, you have to hand in a 3,000-word essay, and it has to be as good as you can make it. Second, you have to write a 1,000-word account of how you responded to the feedback that you got, specifically in the essay draft. You might make reference to other earlier feedback, but that's not required, and you'd only do that if it was somehow relevant to what you were saying about the feedback that you got on the essay draft. So there are various things that can go in here, but you should identify the major changes that you made, the ways that you thought that you improved the essay, any comments, any feedback that you were given that you rejected, that you disagreed with, and why, because that's always going to be an option. Okay, so there's a grid for this. It's very similar. In fact, it's exactly the same as the previous one, except that there's a last category, improvement over draft. So you get credit for that. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. And for the reflection, there's two parts to the grading. Half of it is for giving an accurate account of the improvements that you've tried to make, and half of it is for the depth of reflection on the process that you've been through. Okay, so I've got a couple of examples of from students. I've de-identified them so you can't find out who they are. I thought I would just show you what you can expect your essay plan to look like when it comes back to you. So we have here a question and we have some discussion about the question. This particular question is rather vague and unclear in various respects, and so the commentary is about trying to sharpen it up. There's a small background section here. Again, it wasn't very clear, so there's comment about that. Then we have stuff about the argument, which introduces a number of authors that have been read. And the main thing that I noted was that, apart from sort of difficulties with some of the proposed discussion, that probably this bit here would be enough for the entire essay, and that's actually how it turned out, right? So this person had been thinking about a much bigger project than the one that we ended up with. And so they included, although they weren't required to do this, a list of the things that they'd read prior to the essay plan. And you'll see we have here Alston, Armstrong, Gilardi, Hodges, Jacquet, Oliver. So now let's go down to the essay itself. And the references start, I hope you could remember, there are a lot of them near the start of the alphabet, almost none of them, right? There's no overlap between the things that were read for the essay plan and the things that were actually cited in the essay. What else did I want to say about this? Okay, so there's a small comments about what to do, and this I thought was a credit on the essay plan. The essay itself, so this stuff here was actually all just about words. So these are not substantive comments. This person had, it's like they'd been misusing a thesaurus. They were using words that weren't quite right for the things that they wanted to say. So there's some, not very important, but it's a point about the writing. There are some much more substantive comments. You don't have to read them. This is just a kind of indication of what it might look like when it comes back. It's not as densely populated with comments as the essay plan was, but there's a few, and the comments are quite substantive. There's also some less substantive comments. At this point, this essay is a distinction. Right? They've done a lot of work between the essay plan and writing the essay, but it still needs more work. And there's a sort of a significant lack of clarity about a very important distinction between Russell's theory of descriptions and Russell's theory of proper names. And so I made a suggestion about something else to read, and when you go to the bibliography, I won't do it again. The bibliography on the final essay is quite different from the one for the essay itself. The topic is the same as the one that was agreed on for the essay. When we go down to the end on this one, it ends up at 36 out of 45, which is an HD. So this is somebody who worked consistently through the semester. You can see the sort of feedback that you're going to get and the challenge that the unit presents to you. Okay, so that's one example. I thought I'd show you one other example. Okay, so here's the question that this person came up with. How is dual copular monogenism, misspelt monogenism, superior in helping us understanding the way our language works? The kind of obvious question to ask about this is superior to what? Right? This sounds like a bit of advertising. It doesn't sound like a philosophy question. So that was my first comment about it. There's here, why won't it open? It should. For some reason I can't. Anyway, the comments, there are quite a lot of comments on this essay plan. I should be able to expand them, but I can't for some reason. It doesn't matter. So this one, the plan was sort of okay. It was pretty underdeveloped, and the person who'd written this was a fair way away from understanding the literature, I thought, at this point. So this was a credit for the plan. So here was the topic here. Something about monogenism. How does it help us understand the way that language works, which it's supposed to be a metaphysics course, not supposed to be about language. It was kind of going in the wrong direction in various ways. How should a fictionalist respond to the phenomenological objection? That's the essay, right? So we changed the topic and the direction of the essay in the planning meeting. You'll see that there's a few comments. Probably the most important one is this one here. So there's one question where I raised an objection to what the person had said. Right? So it's spread in between a bunch of other comments. I thought that this essay was really good. It had improved enormously from the plan, and it was now already high distinction. The person worked really hard on revising it, and sorry, there are no comments in the final thing. I'm just trying to find the here. Where's the the reflective piece for this one was really very good. There's a discussion here of a comment where the person writing the essay disagreed with what I'd said, disagreed with my criticism, explained why. And then there was a paragraph explaining why the comment about implicit bias on the other one was important and why it helped to improve the essay. And this one ended up at a very high mark because it was fantastic. So you'll get quite detailed feedback. You'll get, no matter how good your essay is, you'll get something to work with. Part of the reason for showing you this one was that at the essay stage, it was fantastically good, but it was still improved by the feedback that came to it. What else should I say? Contact us if you've got any questions. If you're having any difficulties, contact us as soon as you've got questions or difficulties, or you think that you need help with something. What we want to do is make sure that you end up with a really good essay. So, okay. Good luck.